Welcome to RegCheck Module 4. This module will help you understand changing landscapes surrounding the regulation of all sorts of digital health devices and medical software applications. The objective is to teach you how to determine if certain newer consumer-oriented devices are actually medical devices. We also will review different software-related medical applications and predictive analytics software to see whether they are considered under FDA's authority. Health-related devices and software have become very popular and span a large spectrum of applications. They include wearables. Most familiar are Fitbit and Apple Watch types of products. We also have a lot of disease-based applications like to help manage diabetic patients, and also many that simply try to engage the patient to remind them to take medications or follow post-operative guidelines. All are aimed at improving health. Lastly, there is a significant emergence of software that promises to be predictive of events to help also with patient management. Well, the regulatory landscape is changing with respect to these areas of healthcare innovation. The impetus for the changes was the emergence of the 21st Century Cures Act promoted by Joe Biden shortly before leaving office. Its aim was to help accelerate certain medical-related inventions, making cancer drugs more available, and to deregulate things that the agency is probably considering regulating. It forced FDA to publish 2 policy papers that we will review at a high level. The links for the papers are on the slide for a more detailed personal review. When is what looks like a medical device really not a medical device, meaning it is not regulated? It's when the device is intended to be used for personal health monitoring and not intended for use by a physician for any diagnosis or treatment. So, for example, Fitbits, activity trackers, many heart rate type wearables, all are not regulated. However, let's look at a few developments that seem to be blurring the line. Apple recently received a clearance from the agency for its watch's capability to deliver a single lead sinus rhythm and also identify when a patient was in atrial fibrillation. It was classified as a Class 2 device, but one which could be sold over the counter without any prescription. However, probably due to limited clinical work and capability, the clearance came with a lot of qualifiers, which stated that the user should not take any action based on the device without checking with a healthcare professional, and that it was not intended to replace any traditional diagnosis, and curiously, was not intended for people who had AF. So although they received a clearance, it was not without significant qualifications. Note the broad advisory note Apple posts right on the screen. But some other companies have begun to push the envelope a bit further. Core now makes 2 devices, one where you put 2 fingers on either side of a pad, and the other a different configuration involving a band that attaches to the Apple Watch and provides additional capability to the watch. The company has made a number of submissions, and importantly, their labeling indicates that it is intended for use by clinicians for patients with either known or suspected heart conditions. This is a significant difference in labeling, and it has resulted in the company being able to secure reimbursement. And why? Well, because it can be used for diagnosis. So we are seeing wearables formerly just for personal health monitoring creep now into cleared device status, but they had to make significantly complex submissions to secure that new role, and what follows from that effort is acceptance with both healthcare providers and payers. Let's look at a few examples of the rapid growth in data analytics that's resulting in modeling for predicting various outcomes. Programs that analyze data to predict which patients or groups of patients are at higher risk, so proactive measures might be taken. These applications are often aimed at reducing the likelihood of a patient being readmitted within 30 days after discharge, for which hospitals are now being fined. Some programs are predicting in advance who might become septic, so that an intervention might be made to avoid this costly management condition. And of course, DNA databases are being assembled to help predict who might respond better to certain therapies. The 21st Century Cures Act resulted in FDA issuing a policy document related to what is generically called Clinical Decision Support Software, or CDS, a new acronym for you. Any CDS is not regulated if it complies with these 4 points. First, you can't be analyzing a medical image or processing a signal, such as an ECG, and attempting to calculate the heart rate. However, secondly, you can just redisplay data, for example, a heart rate that's already been calculated by another medical device. Or, for example, simply download from the EMR data on a patient stored there. All of that's permissible. Third, CDS can be designed to support or provide a recommendation to a clinician. However, and here's the kicker, the healthcare professional needs to be able to review the basis for the software's recommendation such that they can see, for example, all of the parameters about that patient to independently review and decide what to do without relying on the software's recommendation. Although this is not a crystal clear explanation, one interpretation that seems reasonable is to post the variables used by the software and also post those that are typically needed to be seen by a clinician to enable a comparison to be made, sort of permitting them to make a comparison between what their own medical judgment might provide and what the software might be telling them. Look at how CDSs are typically developed to understand some other business implications. Typically, a large historical data set is acquired where certain clinical outcomes are known. A predictive algorithm is created which typically will weight certain variables and their changes to accurately predict the outcome ahead of its occurrence. So a model is built. When developing the algorithm, a subset of data is held back to validate its accuracy with data it hasn't been taught with. However, since the data used might have been gathered from only one hospital system, it isn't always clear how well the model will do when applied to a new hospital's data set. So inherently, if you're going to commercialize such a product, you will need to validate it at each site with that new hospital's historical data, or have used enough data from different hospitals to build the model so that it becomes site agnostic. In summary, generally, CDS is not considered a medical device and doesn't require any pre-market clearances. However, regardless of this unregulated determination, it would seem prudent to build a quality management system so that the software can be maintained and to protect yourself from a liability standpoint so that a validation procedure is in place that can be performed at each new site. It seems a business risk if you don't do this, and a quality management system can help you revalidate the software when you wish to make changes and upgrades. It's not entirely clear that these things are required, but it would seem sensible from a business operating perspective. To summarize what we've learned, devices exclusively intended for personal health monitoring are not medical devices. Such devices should not be used by physicians and won't be eligible for any reimbursement. For a CDS to stay unregulated, don't analyze raw signals. You can provide recommendations, but the clinician must be able to independently evaluate what the software is recommending. Best way to probably do that is to just post all of the key parameters for their inspection. Lastly, if you're designing a CDS, build a quality management system to go along with it, and due to the lack of complete clarity within that 4th paragraph we reviewed, it might make sense to file a pre-submission where you can argue perhaps why your system is a CDS. That way your pathway is clearer. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for listening.